What you think about when you're born into a fire? Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. Listen up now, because we're never dropping out. Beat the odds, beat the big house. Our brains are bigger than the doubt. We've been thinking for ourselves, never let the truth fade away. This is bigger than ourselves, we won't let the world burn away, burn away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. To play
Oh, she's having her second trial right now, isn't she?
is face the world's mistakes. Wake at the back of the pack.
Karen Reed. I think she's innocent, but they mistried the first one, and then now she's being tried again.
And we feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake
All right, here we go. Sorry about being late. Been a weird day.
Hey daddies, it's me, the Linda Binda from TikTok. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to thank you for watching Cold Beer Confessionals with Will Bird. I think that's just incredible. I've watched a few episodes and I'm just like very intrigued. But you know what I'm most intrigued in is Big Daddy's meat stick. I heard that it's very thick, like a good old German sausage. You know, Linda and her coochie loves that. Oh, never mind. Let's not go there. Anyways, I hope you have a good show and enjoy it as you can. There's a lot of weird things that go on, especially when it comes from the realm of Linda Bindaland. So, enjoy the show. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Will Bird. This is Cold Beer Confessional. If you want to support the show, do that at coldbeer.fund, coldbeer.fund. I'll try to remember to remind you of that. And follow me on my other social medias. So I've got Twitch, Kick, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, Facebook, TikTok, Rumble, Discord. You can follow me on any of those, on most of those, because who knows when I'm going to get banned again. There's a first time and a second time and a 99th time for everything, right? Let's start here. I saw this. I thought this was a pretty good review of Trump in all his glory. I can't believe people are letting him get away with. He was asked, isn't it important for you, or don't you have to, uphold the Constitution? And 5 different times in that interview, he said, I don't know. So, just like I was saying, the oath he took, they clipped it into this. Check this out.
It's not up for debate. It's not just part of the job. That is the job, the whole thing. The President of the United States, to first and foremost uphold the Constitution. Even the current guy, even Donald Trump, he took that same office more than once.
Preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
No take backsies.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
Now, I don't know if he repeated that oath with his fingers crossed or thought he was...
You would think if MAGA was consistent in fucking anything that they ever touch, that the first time he said that, they'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I thought about making a TikTok and saying, Trump supporters, I understand you support Trump. That's well within your rights. Please tell me a time where you think he did something wrong, bad, something that you don't agree with, and that you can condemn, and see how many people just refuse. Out of all the things, you could say, hey, he probably shouldn't be saying, I don't know, to whether I have to uphold the Constitution. But they're making excuses. Oh, that's a loaded question. They're trying to ask him about this, or he means that. And if you really look into it, this is, what the fuck, dude?
Reciting a line, but just 105 days into his second term.
Consistently fucking us.
He's not so sure. He's going to use one of his lifelines. He doesn't know. Here's Donald Trump speaking with our colleague Kristen Welker about the case of the man wrongly deported to El Salvador.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not.
I don't know. I don't know.
Lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment said...
How weird of a stance is it to take to say, yes, due process applies? Or, yes, I have to uphold the Constitution. That's literally my job.
I don't know. It seems it might say that.
Don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United
It might say that.
States as
I
president?
don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said.
The Constitution, I mean, I don't know. My lawyers are looking at it. From preserve, protect, and defend to, I don't know. Trump's comments mark a place that we have never been before as Americans and as a country, as America. A president has never, ever, ever done that. Never publicly questioned his oath to follow and protect the U.S. Constitution. It's not up for debate.
That's insane, dude. I might do that just try to get a sample. Trump supporters, when is the time that you disagree? Not only do you disagree with him and say, oh, yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that, but you condemn what he done. He should not have done this. That is wrong, right? I wonder how many could actually say that. Could actually find a point where they're like, yep, that's wrong. Probably just be a bunch of people saying, yeah, go Trump, MAGA. Then we have this preacher just saying the quiet part out loud.
The MAGA movement is a false god and is a false idol. And to let a picture prove my point, let's look at a picture that I would like to show you. The picture on the left is the ancient Israelites worshiping the golden calf. The picture on the right is the golden trump. This is an AI-generated video, image still, that was released by the White House about Trump's Gaza. That is, Trump's plan to get rid of Palestinians and to make Gaza into a resort. The MAGA movement is a false idol. Human beings want to do this, you see. We are given the path of love and liberation. We are given the path of progress. And all too often, the path that we choose is the path of regression.
I've actually seen a couple videos from this guy where he talks about
Why on
different issues.
Are religious groups so concerned about this? Have you ever wondered that? Well, the answer is that they really weren't until 1978. Did you know this?
This is about abortion, by the way.
In the 1970s, after Roe v. Wade became law in 1971, the Southern Baptist Convention, the most conservative evangelical group in the United States, passed 4 resolutions in favor of a person's right to choose. Did you know this? In the 1970s, the Southern Baptist Convention was in favor of a person's right to choose. Here's what happened. When Brown v. Board of Education became law, which made it illegal to segregate schools, white folks, especially white folks in the South, began to put their children in private Christian schools. They were called segregation academies. And that way, their good little white children didn't have to learn with children of color. These were religious organizations with a 501c3 status. Eventually, that was ruled unconstitutional under the Nixon administration, and any school that was doing this would lose its 501c3 status. Now, there was this guy, his name was Paul Weyrich. You ever heard of him? He was a political strategist, and he was all in favor of using the segregation issue to get white, conservative, Southern evangelicals out to vote. When it turned out that segregation could no longer be the issue to get those folks out to vote, he started looking for another issue. And he tried several, but in 1978, he came up with this plan to try the issue of abortion. And he identified 4 midterm elections. And he sent people out with pamphlets about abortion to pamphlet church parking lots. And so they went to church parking lots, and in these close elections with Democratic incumbents and very conservative anti-reproductive health Republicans running in very low voter turnout races, that strategy worked. And in all 4 of those elections, those anti-reproductive health candidates won the election. And they realized that abortion was an issue that would get people out to vote. It would galvanize that Southern, conservative, white, evangelical base. And so they really latched on to that. Jerry Falwell, by his own admission, didn't preach about abortion for years after Roe v. Wade became law. But in 1978, Paul Weyrich recognized that this was the issue, and so he helped Jerry Falwell found the moral majority. In fact, Paul Weyrich coined the term moral majority. And that became the issue to get people out to vote at the polls. What's abortion really about? It's really about racism. That's what it's about. That racism was no longer
the Southern strategy
cause to rally around to get people to the polls. Because being anti-reproductive health simply isn't biblical and it isn't faithful. Why on earth are religious groups so...
He's not afraid to say it. He's not afraid to say it. Mark Driscoll called me the Antichrist. What is this?
Fundamentalist pastor Mark Driscoll took issues with one of my videos and called me Antichrist. Let's take a look. He says, shouldn't the children be fed before the dogs? She simply says, not even the dogs deserve crumbs from the table.
And that, kids, is exactly what blasphemy looks like on the internet.
I'm not sure how simply retelling the biblical story is blasphemy, but let's let him explain.
He says that Jesus sinned against a woman, that a woman had to rebuke him, and that he had to repent to her.
I know it's shocking to you, Mark, that you can't say whatever you want to women and that you might need to apologize to them, but that's exactly what Jesus is modeling in this scripture lesson.
That would make him imperfect and a sinner.
So I think it's important to point out that there are various Christologies, that is how divine you think Jesus is, and you don't have to believe that Jesus is God to follow Jesus. And if you don't think that Jesus is God and lived a sinless life, then that means that Jesus can still be our best teacher about God without being perfect. And I think that this story that made it into the Gospels is a perfect example of how someone could encounter a situation in which they didn't respond in a perfect way, and then give us an example of how to course correct when that happens.
She did not correct him. He tested her.
So Mark is reading this story. The Syrophoenician woman goes up to Jesus and asks him to help. He declines, and he says, shouldn't the children, his people, be fed before the dogs? And she says, don't even the dogs deserve scraps from the table? And Jesus realizes that he has had a blind spot and he decides to help her. But the story makes clear that if she hadn't advocated for herself, then Jesus wasn't going to help.
He took the language of the day and some of the negative pejorative images that were projected on her and to see what her response would be. And what she said was, I'm not saying that I deserve anything, but shouldn't a little grace and mercy fall from the proverbial table to me and my household? And Jesus says, absolutely right. I am that God of grace. There's more than sufficient grace for you.
Fundamentalists are really threatened by this verse, and they'll try to do fancy footwork and say things like, oh, Jesus wasn't really insulting her, and he didn't call her a dog. He called her like the diminutive form of dog, puppy. So it wasn't bad. He wasn't calling her anything bad.
Makes sense.
And that is just the kind of theological gymnastics that you have to do whenever you're trying to make the Bible fit.
This is in Matthew. It's basically a Canaanite woman came seeking help for her kid that was demon possessed, I think. Something like that.
Your worldview, instead of letting your worldview be informed by what you're reading in the biblical text.
This just is what happens when you take a deconstructionist, woke, progressive.
Jesus tells her, like, I'm only sent. He kind of ignores her at first, and the disciples will try to rush her away, and Jesus is like, no, she doesn't have to go, but I was here to sent here to help the people of Israel, right? And then she refuses to leave and like bows down or some shit. Very persistent, I guess. Then they have this back and forth.
Social justice Marxist paradigm and put it over the Bible, you end up defending demons, causing Jesus to be a sinner, and then him repenting to people because he has failed them and sinned against them.
It's funny how for fundamentalists, any reading of scripture that empowers groups that have been historically oppressed and marginalized is suddenly a deconstructionist, woke, progressive social justice, Marxist paradigm. I think that's really just the paradigm of the gospel, one that lifts up groups that have been historically marginalized. I think this is particularly interesting coming from Mark Driscoll, who has been a part of actively oppressing marginalized groups, especially women and the LGBTQ plus community.
And if that's what you
This is Dr. Caleb Jilinis, Jilines.
Antichrist.
All I'm going to say is I'm not sure that Mark Driscoll is the best person to be defining who is and isn't like Christ.
I've seen a couple videos from him. Maggot's False God. That's the one we just watched. Trump is Palpatine. Hold on.
How liberty dies with thunderous applause. And how does it happen? One person, Palpatine, comes up with a plot.
It is very interesting that on Star Wars Day, May the 4th, they tweeted out a picture of Trump with a lightsaber, and it's red, okay? Now, if you don't know the lore behind Star Wars, that's fine. The Jedi, the good guys, fight something called the Sith, okay? Now, the Jedi, their lightsabers are blue and green or whatever, and it kind of like attracts to your spirit, whatever it is. Blue, green, purple, all different colors. Kind of a white-looking one. The reason the Sith are red is there's this crystal in a lightsaber that the power flows through that kind of gives it its energy. It's called a kyber crystal. The reason the bad guys all have red ones is because they force their hatred and spite so in such a strong way on the kyber crystal, it literally bleeds. It's like a horrific story about how much hate and rage they have inside of them for people, for humanity, for others. And it turns, that's the only way to get a red lightsaber. In some of the, like, it doesn't really address it. I mean, it talks about that. But in some of, like, the literature around it and shit, because there's all these books and there's canon, non-canon. Like, people ask, like, what about the red ones? Those seem cool. And they're like, no. This is, like, the ultimate travesty that anybody can do. That force all of your hate into this. I don't know. It's insane that they would just tweet that out, but whatever.
He lies, he spreads misinformation, and finds a scapegoat, in this case, the Jedi, blames it all on them, and uses that as an excuse to grab power. Sound familiar?
It says, the Star Wars universe, red lightsabers are particularly associated with the Sith and are made by bleeding a kyber crystal, turning it red through the use of dark side emotions, hatred for mankind. The process in canon involves pouring negative emotions like rage, hate, fear, and pain into the crystal. In the expanded universe legends, red lightsabers are made, blah, 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 whatever. Like, it's just interesting that they do that. The Sith use the Force to pour negative emotions into their kyber crystal, causing it to bleed and change color to red.
A little bit, right? It's a reminder of how delicate republics are, even constitutional republics with representative democracies, how quickly they can fall. And it is a...
It's like they told the world like he's the bad guy. I don't know. Also, this is also canon. There is never, ever one single Sith Lord. Okay? There's never just one Sith. It's actually called the Rule of Two. I know I'm a nerd. I don't care. It's actually called the Rule of Two. So, in the movies, anytime there's ever mention of somebody or suspicion or whatever, that there's a Sith, there's never just one. Okay? There have to be at least two. At least two. A master and apprentice. That's in the movie.
A reminder that there is a call to embrace the light side, to embrace the side that values diversity of opinion, diversity of belief, that values diversity of leadership, and embraces that. It is a reminder that with the fragility of republics, that we all have an obligation to stand on behalf of those whose rights are being oppressed, whose rights are being taken away. And so in the United States today, as we see the possibility of a republic that is shaky at the moment, it is our obligation, our duty, to continue to fight for justice. This is how liberty dies.
Usually the apprentice grows up and kills the master. This is the way it usually happens, but whatever. There's your Star Wars lore for today. You guys want a story time? I'm kind of pissed off, okay? Let's do story time for a second. Let's put something in the background on. Now listen. During the hurricane, we have a lot of land at the campground, and I do the mowing and weed eating and all that and the maintenance. Mowing and weed eating, though, like through the spring and summer, is like 90% of my job. It was just a huge place. It's not as bad now because a lot of stuff's covered in sand. But before, there was just a lot to mow and like 10 times that amount to weed eat. Hours and hours and hours of weed eating. So during the hurricane, I moved the lawnmower and just hung the weed eaters up higher. We had no idea the water was going to get that high, but the building collapsed, took the weed eaters with it. So over the last couple of weeks, I've mowed a couple times, but we just didn't have a weed eater. So the owner is like, well, pick out the weed eater that you want, and we'll buy it, for the campground, and then we can start weed eating again, so it doesn't look so bad. And I was like, okay. Gave me the company card. I knew exactly what weed eater I wanted, okay? The weed eater I wanted was a Stihl FS 91R, okay? A Stihl FS 91R. It is basically my go-to weed eater when I'm doing something like this. It's heavy duty enough to where you can weed eat with it for hours and take down some bigger stuff, but it's not so heavy that if I have to carry it for 5 hours, it's not going to break my fucking back. There are bigger ones, more powerful ones. There are weaker ones that are like home use models. This is really on the bottom end of Stihl's commercial line of weed eaters, okay? There's another one called the FS70. Obviously, the number's smaller. That is also commercial for commercial application. It is almost the exact same weed eater, okay? It has like 0.1% smaller motor, okay? And the big difference and the reason that I wanted the 91 over the 70 is because the 91 has a twice as big a fuel tank. I know this is weird stuff to know, but I've done a lot of weed eating in my life, okay? Don't worry about it. The 70, about $100 cheaper, and it has a smaller fuel tank. Not a big deal. It actually makes the weed eater a little bit lighter, but you have to go get fuel more often, okay? Every couple hours you have to go get fuel compared to like every 3 hours or 4 hours of weed eating. So I look online. The FS91R is usually about $400, okay? And the FS70 is usually about $300. I told you there was a difference of about $100. And I'm looking, and obviously we don't have a lot of money right now. We haven't got any of the grants approved that we put in for. The GoFundMe didn't do very well. FEMA didn't help us, and insurance didn't help us. So I'm trying to save money. Still expensive weed eater. So there's a new store that opened here about 45 minutes away called Rural King. Rural, Rural King. And I've been to some out of town before. They're really nice. They're like a Tractor Supply, but just fucking huge. It's kind of like a Tractor Supply and a Harbor Freight together. And they sell Stihl products. And as I was looking, even though it's a 45-minute drive and there's a store 5 minutes down the road that I could go get a Stihl weed eater from, they had $100 off the 91R. So that brings it down to $299 instead of $399. That's the same price as the 70, okay? And I still get the bigger fuel tank. I still get a slightly more powerful engine. Like, good to go, right? That's a great deal. I'll drive 45 minutes to save $100 fucking dollars, right? And go to a store I haven't been to. I've been to Rural Kings before, just not our local one. It's like less than a year old. So I was like, that is a good deal. I look online. This sale is going on from May the 5th to the 15th. And it says online they have 9 in stock. I found this all out last night, okay? They have 9 in stock. So I'm like, I could buy it online, but I got the company card or whatever. And the reason I got a new company card is because the last time I used it online, somehow it got stolen and somebody used it at a mattress firm. So I'm like, I don't want to buy it online and fucking risk somebody hacking. It's not my card. I put my cards out there all the time, but I always watch my bank account and, I could cancel them, turn them off, whatever. So I was like, fuck it, I'll go do it in person. I was going to have to pick it up in person anyway, so I drive 45 minutes over there, and I get the Rural King. I go inside, and right off to the left is the gigantic Stihl display. They've got literally probably 120 weed eaters, okay? just steel weed eaters. They have 2 whole aisles of just steel with a center display. Like, it's huge. And I start looking. And I go to look, and there are tons of weed eaters, but the 91R that I'm there for is missing. I do see a tag where it says on sale for $329, and then another like $20 off, or what, it makes it $299, whatever. I do see a tag there, but it's empty. And I check online again, still 9 in stock. So I go to the next aisle over, and there's a guy there in a vest. And I'm like, hey, don't mean to cause a problem. I know you're busy. I'm looking at your website, and it says there's 9 of these weed eaters in stock, and I need one. And maybe the website's wrong. Maybe your inventory's wrong, maybe whatever. And he says, no. The 91R? And I said, yes. He said, it's on sale right now. And I said, yes. And he said, they're in the back. Like in the back receiving area or whatever, right? The warehouse part of it. I said, okay. Can we go get one? He said, no. You got to talk to the guy that's over there in the steel department. And I was like, well, there wasn't a guy. And he's like, oh, he'll be right back. So I go back to the weed eaters, and I start talking to the guy. One part I left out is the guy did walk around with me, the steel area, and he's like, oh, you're right, they're not here, but there are some in the back. You know, he thought maybe I looked over it or whatever. So I looked for like 10 minutes through every weed eater. The guy that was the first guy to help me looked for like 20 minutes through every weed eater. Then he told me they were in the back. And I was like, can I go get one from the back? Can you go get one from the back? Can somebody go get one from the back? No. You have to talk to the guy that's usually at this desk. And I said, well, he's not there. He said, okay, well, he'll be back in a minute. So they're like, okay. So I walked around for about 5 minutes, and I saw the guy come back to the desk. This is where it all went downhill, okay? So I went to the guy at the desk that does the steel whatever. And I said, hey, not trying to be a bother, but I am here to buy a steel FS91R. Here's your website. It says there's 9 in stock. Show him my phone. 9 in stock. It says pick up today. He's like, okay, let's look. And I was like, no, I already looked. He's like, well, I'll check again. So he walks through every fucking weed eater again and comes back to me and says, yep, looks like we're sold out. And I said, no, you got 9 in stock. Are you saying that it could be that the inventory system's wrong? Okay, our local Ace Hardware yells at me every time I bring up their inventory because they said there's been something wrong with it for the last 2 goddamn years that shows everything in their store in stock, even though it's not in stock. So maybe the inventory's wrong. I'm like, no. It says there's 9 in stock. Is the inventory wrong? And he said, I guess so. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, the guy that's right there, and I pointed to the guy like on the power tool aisle, like the Milwaukee aisle. I said, the guy was right there, said he saw all 9 of these in the back. Can we get one from the back? He says, oh, no. And I'm like, what? And he said, we have a guy that works in the back. He's not here today. And I said, okay, I could be the guy that works in the back. You could be the guy that works in the back. He could be the guy that works. What's the problem? Is it that they're not put together or like in a box? I'll buy unassembled. And he said, no. They're put together. What the guy in the back does is he takes he comes with a little Ziploc bag of like tools, like a spark plug tool, an owner's manual, whatever. He takes those bags and zip ties it to the handle, and then he brings it out here. And I said, well, that seems like something we could do together. Me and you could find the weed eater and the bag. I don't even care if it's got a zip tie. Honestly, I don't even want the bag. Okay? I know what the owner's manual looks like. I can download it online. I have 3,000 of those spark plug tools that I don't fucking need. I'll just take the weed eater as is. He's like, yeah, it don't work like that. The guy that works in the back brings them out, and then we can sell them. I've already been here like 40 minutes at this point, okay? Then this guy's, I guess he hears me like talking to this guy like he's a fucking child. So his like boss or whatever comes over. Doesn't speak to me, just stares at us. And I'm like, but me and you together, or you by yourself, or you and that guy, and I pointed to his boss, you can't go back there and get this fully assembled weed eater that is showing in your inventory and sell it to me, the customer, for the price that's listed online, in your store, ready to go right now, all because this guy missed work today. That's right. So I said, well, your website says, I told him, I said, I drove 45 minutes to get over here. I don't want to do this again. I need to weed eat today, right? It's already after lunch. I need to weed eat today, get it today. I'd like to take care of it today, so I don't have to fucking drive back over here. I want to handle this today. And they said, sorry. So I said, let me just ask you a question. Okay? Hypothetically, in this world we live in, use your imagination. Your website says, purchase now, pick up today. So hypothetically, let's say this morning, I woke up and I bought this weed eater online and I wanted to pick it up today, and then let's pretend that's what happened, and now I'm here to pick it up. What would have happened? And he told me we would have had somebody go to the back, pick your order, the weed eater, bring it up front with your name on it, sent you an email, and you could have come and picked it up. And I said, why can't we still do that? Why can't somebody go to the back, pick my order, bring it to the front, put my name on it, and I'll check out and pick it up? And he told me again, because the guy that works in the back is not here today. So I said, what about this? What if I go over there, and I pointed like an aisle away, and I said, we pretend we never met each other. And I get on my phone. It's already in my cart. I get on my phone, and I purchase the weed eater on your website right now. If I purchase it right now, and then I just stand over there until I get an email that says it's ready for pickup, would that work? And he said, trying to game the system. He said, trying to game the system. And I said, I'm just trying to buy a fucking weed eater. Like, I'm getting pissed now. I've been asked not to return to this store, by the way. I said, I'm just trying to buy a fucking weed eater. And he said, first of all, sir, that's not the way that works. Second of all, it's now after 1 p.m. and only orders before 1 p.m. are guaranteed for same-day pickup. So he's telling me that even if I go over there and buy this fucking weed eater, that he's going to go out of his way to make sure I can't pick the motherfucker up today? Trying to game the system, huh? Trying to buy a goddamn weed eater. So his boss is standing there. I'm like, what do you think about this? And he's like, yeah, policy's policy. Policy's policy. So I said, this is the dumbest goddamn scheme. Are you trying to hide them? Is it because they're on sale? No, sir. The guy that works in the back isn't here today. In fact, this is when he told me, in fact, I don't know if you'd be able to pick it up tomorrow because he's not going to be here tomorrow either. I lost my shit over a goddamn... I swear, if I didn't know better, I would think that I'm on some type of, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, some type of show where they see if they can make me fucking lose my shit. Like there's an audience, maybe people are placing bets, I don't know. I don't think the first guy was supposed to tell me they're in the back. That's what I think. Because when I started talking to the second guy, he was like, if it's not out here, it's not for sale. Sorry. But the first guy told me they were in the back. And then when I brought that up to him, the second guy had to admit they were in the back. Anyways, I ended up cussing this guy out so bad they asked me to leave the store. But joke's kind of on them. I snuck back in and just bought the FS70. But it's not the one that's the point. It's not the one I wanted, okay? It's not the one I wanted. I shouldn't have to sneak back in to buy a weed eater. Like, you should be able to go to the back and get the fucking weed eater, right? I don't get it. I ended up with a 70. I wanted the 91. Same price. Honestly, I lost out. I probably just should have went somewhere else and fucking bought it. But I was so mad I couldn't bring myself to leave. So I got back in. That guy was wandering off again. I bought the 70 for the same price, got less for the same price. So that's what happened. I weeded with it for like 4 hours today. I don't know. It reminds me of the chicken sandwich at McDonald's. It reminds me of the chicken sandwich. Something's going on. There's a conspiracy. I don't know how else. Mariah's seen it. Mariah has seen people go completely out of their way, violate policy, violate common sense to just say the most retarded shit to me. I'm already stressed out. Like when I'm like in an environment with other people and like, or an environment I don't understand very well, or there's like people walking in aisles. I'm like trying to get in the corner and like not have my back up. Like I'm already fucking stressed out, and people will go out of their way to do or say the most ridiculous shit. Like he basically told me, even you're trying to game the system, huh? Nope, won't work for you. It is 103, sir. And we only guarantee deliveries, same-day pickups, up until 1 p.m. It was literally 103. 103. And I'm in the store already. I'm in the fucking store already. I'm still mad about it. I'm mad about it sitting here right now. Like I wanted the 91. I got the 70. They fucking tried to lie to me. It was in the back. The guy that doesn't work in the back, not gonna be here today or tomorrow. But I need to fucking weed eat. Anyways, that's your story time, chat. Mariah texts me, and she's like, hello. She had texted me like 4 or 5 times. She's like, hello, are you alive? And I'm like, I'm literally at the point to where I'm going to get in a fist fight with somebody at the Rural King. She's like, do I need to come get you? I didn't respond. Probably. That's probably the best option.
So this is insane. This discussion is about Shiloh Hendricks, the racist lady that called a 5-year-old child the N-word at a playground.
Why would you want to support a white racist?
Because I want to support free speech, and you cannot have free speech in a country.
No, that's fine. You can support free speech, but you also have to be accountable for what you say. Would you use the N-word out of interest?
Yes.
You would?
I do, quite frequently.
You use the N-word quite frequently. Well, why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist. Are you?
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
But if you use the N-word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shiloh Hendricks is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away.
So this is not the woman who said it. This is an influencer named Lily Gaddis. She's like a trad wife influencer, Lily Gaddis, and she's arguing for this is free speech.
You were saying Carmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter. That's a different.
Sorry, just to be clear, you just said to me you use the N-word regularly.
And yes, she has dropped the N-word multiple times. This is that trad wife video we watched where she's like making bread or something, and she's like, all my friends are all out here. Why do I want to be married to a good man? All my friends are out here trying to date, and they're all married to broke-ass ninjas. And she just throws it out there.
Regularly. In what context? Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the N-word? When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist?
Correct.
So anyone that hasn't been living for the past 10 years has recognized that Donald Trump and his rhetoric and the rhetoric of his supporters have emboldened the racists in this country, have made them more open to say how they feel. And what's really, really bothered me past 3 election cycles.
She went viral for throwing out broke-ass ninjas, basically, and doubling down on that.
The reasonable conservative voters that say something along the lines of, well, we're not electing a Boy Scout leader. We're not electing a priest. We're electing a president. I'm voting for him based off of policies. And they use that to ignore his felonies and ignore the fact that he's found civilly liable for sex.
Here, this might be a longer clip, actually. Hold on.
No. A country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly, and you will
go
not
on, then
have
say it. Say
you will not have
go on.
We're not making it illegal to say it, right? It's just obviously bad.
No.
I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be. There's a bunch of white people up here, and one Uncle Tom on the left here, and to ask her to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here with a Jewish person and say, please use a Jewish slur in front of this Jewish. It's ridiculous. I understand you don't have any bad intent, Pierce. I understand what you're trying to do, but we already know she's racist, and I don't want to invite a racial.
He wasn't inviting her to say it. He's challenging her. He don't think she'll do it on national television, which I don't know. She might.
Harm to me.
I hear you, and I accept that, and we'll leave it there. Thank you.
I want to live in a country where people are allowed to.
People are fucking wild anymore, dude.
Assaulting a woman and ignore.
I don't think it should be illegal to say the N-word for anybody. I think all words have like a social responsibility to them. Once you say them, well, there's going to be repercussions socially. I don't think the government should be arresting people.
The horrible things that he says on social media, calling it mean tweets, when a lot of these things have led to tangible harm to marginalized communities in this country. Just as one example, when he continued to refer to C-19 as China virus and Kung flu, we saw like a 50% rise in hate crimes towards Asian Americans. When he lied on the debate stage about Haitians eating cats and dogs, we saw bomb threats towards not only Haitian migrants, but Haitian Americans in this country. Not to mention the way he speaks about women and women's reproductive rights, which emboldened men in this country after Roe v. Wade was overturned to start chanting, your body, my choice, choice, there's no way these despicable people would have had the gall to say stuff like this before Donald Trump made it acceptable. And this clip is just yet another example. Can you imagine 10 years ago, a white woman going on a panel and openly saying, yes, I'm a racist. Yes, I use the N-word regularly and frequently. This is mind-boggling to me. And I can, oh, by the way, I already know that if she starts getting hate online, just wait until her crowdfunding site goes up, right? Oh, I'm getting hate for speaking the truth, and all the racists are going to donate, and she's going to have a multi-$100,000 racism fund, like Shiloh Hendricks does. So I know that now it's probably clear, at least to some of these conservatives that said, well, I'd rather vote for mean tweets than record inflation or whatever, some bullshit like that, right? I know it's clear to some of you now that, oh shit, his policies were also dog shit.
Right.
Is, I need you to recognize.
It's still empowering others.
The damage that your vote for Donald Trump has done to this country will take decades to undo. And that's if we still have a country in the next couple decades.
All right. So on this same topic, the some account named Shocking Vids shared a video of this woman doing this Shiloh woman. And it says, woman gets $600K in donations after calling baby the N-word on a playground. Now, this was recommended to me, okay? And the very first comment I see is from someone named Stars. She says, dude recording has charges that shouldn't allow him anywhere near a kid. Plus, he's recording a children while at the park without a kid of his own there. Think we should be more worried about that. Now, someone replies to that named Issa. Issa says, those charges were dropped in the interest of justice. That usually means, like, there was no case here. It wasn't dropped because a botched fucking, testimony or evidence gathering in the interest of justice is usually because even the police and the prosecutors don't believe that they should have brought this case now with the facts they have now. Okay? Which is right. I like that. And then someone named Jade Jones enters the chat. Jade Jones says, I don't care if the charges were dropped. Anybody that's ever been accused of any of this type of stuff should never be around kids. Jade Jones. So, of course, me being the nice guy that I am, I thought I'd reply to Jade Jones. So I said, Jade Jones fucks babies. I don't have any proof, but I bet she got away with it. What is wrong with you, you dirty baby fucker? Now, Jade Jones didn't like that. Jade Jones didn't like that at all. She said, what is wrong with you? I can't believe you would even suggest that. I said, Jade Jones, I'm just using your logic. His charges were dropped in the interest of justice, meaning that the state didn't even believe that he committed these crimes. But according to you, accusations are the same, so you've been accused. I can't believe you would even say this, you dirty baby fucker. Jade Jones says, my logic is I've seen many people in my life get off and do not do time for crimes. It's a real issue, but regardless, I would rather believe someone done a crime than not and chance something. Casey Anthony is innocent, so would you let her watch your children because she's innocent, knowing all the allegations of her killing her daughter? So like I originally just said, because someone gets off for a crime doesn't mean they didn't commit it. There could just not be enough evidence to prove it and other following factors. And I said, Jade Jones. And like I said, you fuck babies. So I guess we're at an impasse. I have to side with that you did it rather than any benefit of the doubt. You taught me that, baby fucker. Jade Jones replies, and you're a gross man child. And the fact you came up with something like that is questionable. Like, why did your brain instantly go to think that? Weird, odd, gross, strange, and creepy behavior, honestly. If you think otherwise, then you, sir, in fact, have a weird mindset and should seek help. God bless you. Have a nice day. And I said, Jade Jones, there is no way on God's green earth that I'm going to sit here on Al Gore's fucking internet and be talked down to by a dirty baby fucker. I have as much evidence about you as you do about this man. I'm amazed you can't understand the irony. I guess God didn't install irony into baby fuckers. It's like talking to a dumb, racist brick wall. Then I was blocked. Sorry, Jay Jones. I didn't mean to spill your secret out here for everybody. Dirty baby fucker. I have been blocked. Sorry, Jay Jones. Shout out to all the non-baby fuckers out there, I guess. I guess that's where we're at now. Got to trust the allegations. Got to stick with them. Dirty baby fucker. Let's see. Let's refresh this. Maybe. Is he going to refresh? Wait. There it is. Oh, this did not refresh. There it goes. Okay. What about the Catholic Church? What does the Trump administration think about the Catholic Church abusing children? Let's see.
Uh-oh. Another one for the Catholics. You're not going to like this one. Or maybe you will. So, quick background. A few days ago, Washington State signed a new bill into law, and that was SB 5375. What this bill does is make clergy into mandated reporters for child abuse.
Why aren't they already? Why are clergy a group of people sometimes seek out, a group of people that are sometimes sought out for like these admissions and things and sharing things that you wouldn't share with anybody else because you trust them? Why aren't they already mandatory reporters? They should be. And by the way, it's all clergy in the states. All clergy. All clergy.
Does is make clergy into mandated reporters for child. Mandated reporters are teachers, medical professionals, social workers, etc., who basically, if they have reason to suspect that a child is being harmed in certain ways, they are mandated to report it.
If you work for them, right? If you work for them and their tax exempt status, that's basically what defines the church. Then yes.
And up until now, clergy have not been mandated reporters. So if they
in Washington and some other states, some states they are.
Clergy have not been mandated reporters. So if they witnessed or suspected harm, they had no obligation to report it to the authorities. And by the way, it's important to note that this law applies to all clergy, right? Across the religious spectrum. Seems like a pretty good law, right? Well, the DOJ has an issue with it.
Trump's DOJ is challenging this law.
Why? Well, because they claim that the law is anti-Catholic.
Weird. Very weird. Their claim is that, oh, well, if they say it in a confessional, then we shouldn't have to tell anybody. Who cares? I don't care if they say it in a confessional. You could do the FBI raid meme where they kick the goddamn door down in the confessional. I don't give a fuck. Catholic priests worry that the new law, which got the sign-off from Governor Bob Ferguson on May 2nd, would keep them from doing that work and puts their position as clergy at risk. He said it violates a Catholic's right to confess their sins to a priest, and clergy can be removed from the church if they report such information from what's supposed to be a confidential setting under the seal of confession. He says they already do report everything that happens outside a confessional, but a confessional is sacred grounds.
Yikes.
Insane, dude. Insane. Insane. That's crazy. The Archdiocese of Seattle wants to meet with the governor to rework the language of this newly passed law to remove confessionals from it. I don't really give a fuck about your make-believe sky daddy and what you do to appease him. Why can't we just protect kids? What the fuck? And then we have this coming out of, was this Arkansas, Oklahoma? I think it's Oklahoma.
Oklahoma public school students will soon have to learn in their social studies classes about debunked conspiracy theories about the 2020 election being fraudulent. This all after states.
Oklahoma is going to start teaching kids in social studies about the rigged 2020 election.
Superintendent Ryan Walters added lessons about those things to the social studies standards in the state curriculum without telling the state school board he was doing that before they voted on those standards. And now we've caught up with a history teacher. He taught history for more than 30 years who says this is really going to put teachers in a really hard place. Here is our story with him.
Dan Nolan remembers the good old days.
The Oklahoma social studies standards back in 2010, 2011 were rated among the top 10 in the nation.
The days when there seemed to be consensus over what was fact and what was fiction.
They were absolutely first rate, and they were written by social studies teachers that came together in the summer and basically volunteered time to put those standards together.
But since he wrapped up his 3-decade-long career teaching high school social studies in Norman Public Schools, these days, things seem different.
You're playing with political, historical dynamite here.
He's talking about Oklahoma's new social studies standards, the state's guidebook telling public school teachers what to teach your kids. The new standards we told you state school board members approved without...
If anything, it's been proven that the strong connection between all the Catholic churches, the way they have like a hierarchy. So like a Baptist church gets busted, which they do too. I'm not just blaming Catholics. Like a Baptist church, somebody's fucking with kids or whatever, they get busted, whatever. They don't really have anybody to appeal to or send that up to a higher authority. The Catholic Church's problem is like rumors start about this one guy doing something with kids or whatever, something he's not supposed to be doing. They send that up the chain. Instead of just calling him out and calling the fucking police, they send that up the chain to say, we don't know what to do. This could be true. It could be not. So they just move that guy away and he becomes a problem somewhere else. And it happens again and again and again and again. If anything, the way that, non-Catholic churches are, they don't have this issue because there's no chain of command to run it up to, right? It doesn't seem as bad as a cover-up part of it, even though they still have the issue of abusing kids it doesn't seem like the cover-up's as bad.
Without having time first to read them and realize State Superintendent Ryan Walters added some controversial topics to them. The standards, we told you, Walters picked out-of-state right-wing activists from the Heritage Foundation and PragerU to oversee the writing of. The same standards school districts now say just...
The Heritage Foundation and PragerU are the people that he used to write this.
So happened to be written in such a way that only Heritage Foundation and PragerU curriculum would fit them. The standards, this retired teacher says, would have made his job near impossible.
You're in effect cementing the future of what's going to happen in education here. And for something that we can't even agree about within the state of Oklahoma.
Like this standard, requiring first graders identify stories about people and ideas from Judaism that influenced our nation's founders, including David and Goliath, Moses, and the Ten Commandments.
And the idea of...
No, the Libs of TikTok lady, her name is Chaya. She is a fucking a real estate agent that went fucking crazy during COVID-19. So she blew up sharing all these COVID-19 election conspiracies and shit, and then obviously the Libs on TikTok that she owns or whatever. But she was a real estate agent from like New York or some shit. If she's on the school board, then she was appointed to that afterwards. I know her background is she's a real estate agent.
This retired teacher says would have made his job near impossible.
You're in effect cementing the future of what's going to happen in education here. And for something that we can't even agree about within the state of Oklahoma.
Like this standard, requiring first graders identify stories about people and ideas from Judaism that influenced our nation's founders, including David and Goliath, Moses, and the Ten Commandments.
And the idea of simplistically taking something out of context and expecting children of that age to understand, once again, theological points, I would not be comfortable doing that.
Or this one, requiring third graders to identify stories from Christianity that influenced the American founders, including the teachings of Jesus, like the Golden...
The American founders. You know, Jesus. Didn't Jesus found America?
Rule and the Sermon on the Mount. Lessons, he says, deserve to be taught in church by qualified clergy who've actually gone to seminary.
That's a question for faith and family, and the idea, going back to our first amendment to the Constitution, that once again, we're not going to establish religion, and we are treading perilously close on that, on our constitutional, on our founding fathers.
Of course, there's the one Walters quietly added, requiring high school students to identify discrepancies in 2020 election results, including the sudden halting of ballot counting in select cities and battleground.
The sudden halting of ballot counting in select cities and battleground states, which has been widely fucking debunked.
States, the security risks of mail-in balloting, sudden batch...
Yeah, he walked on water from England to the U.S., and then he had 2 fishes and 5 loaves, I think, when he got here. He gave that to the Native Americans.
Dumps, an unforeseen record number of voters, and the unprecedented contradiction of Bellwether County trends.
Once again, these are things that I know that President Trump feels deeply about, but that doesn't make them true.
It's like they're all in this Trump dick-sucking contest where they think like, I'll build a statue to him. I'll change school curriculum for him. You know, I'll fucking punch a Mexican.
The bottom line is this has been investigated.
That's going to get clipped, isn't it?
Into infinite detail, and it was a good election.
All of it, he says, will create a conundrum for teachers. Teach the facts and risk their jobs, or fall in line and teach the standards.
This is a question that the legislators need to look at, because are they telling people to follow the truth and break the law?
It is Victory in Europe Day, isn't it? May 8th?
Putting teachers in an impossible position here.
In Oklahoma City, Spencer Humphrey, Oklahoma's News 4.
Insane, dude. Insane. What is this?
But you can't police people for being anti-Israel or pro-Israel. You can police people for violating the law, and we have seen some of that with some of these protests.
Okay, so you agree that people who break in and vandalize a building should be prosecuted?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just checking because you did help raise money for people who did so on January 6th, which was, impeding an official proceeding, breaking into a building that they weren't,
vandalizing it,
and vandalizing the Capitol.
That goes tough. And then one more thing I want to put on your, I don't even know what to say, on your social radar, philosophy. I don't even know where this fits in. To me, this is weird and should not, absolutely should not become a standard practice. And the judge in this case even admits that this piece of evidence submitted weighed on him so heavily, he gave a harsher sentence to the perpetrator. So check this out.
An AI video of a man who was killed in a road rage incident was used in court to address his killer. It's a back.
So this case is all kinds of weird. He doesn't give a big background on this case. So, two guys driving on the road, get into some sort of road rage incident for somebody cut somebody off, and they're cussing each other and going back and forth, okay? Cussing, screaming, throw their hands up, but they're in two separate cars. The first car pulls up to a red light with this guy in it, okay? Veteran, he pulls up, stops at the red light. Second car pulls up behind him and honks the horn. Still cussing, still throwing his hands up, hits the horn a few times. This guy gets out of his truck, walks back to the guy behind him in the car. He got out of the vehicle, which seems like an escalation, but whatever. He gets out of the vehicle and comes to the other guy's car. The other guy pulls a gun and shoots him. Shoots him twice. He fires 3 rounds. One of them is goes off and strikes another car. 2 rounds hit him. One of them is fatal. It goes to court. Whatever. Now, this guy was convicted on manslaughter. Okay, one of like 9 charges of the shooter. One weird thing in court. You guys remember when Alec Baldwin was convicted? And then suddenly somebody come in and they're like, you didn't ever showed the defense these bullet casings that were randomly turned in by some weird guy to the sheriff's office months after the investigation started. And they throw it all out. Turns out the prosecution in this case downloaded everything off this guy's phone and did not give it to the defense. And not only did they not give it to him, it was exculpatory evidence. In this guy's phone, he had been talking to people about how he was snapping off so easy. He had been in several other road rage incidents where he just thought he was going to beat the fuck out of the next person that said something to him while he was driving. Like really weird evidence they did not give to the defense team, which is weird about this case to begin with. I don't think the guy should have fired as early as he did, right? It seems like he fired before like a fist was thrown or a threat was made or any of that. But there was also evidence that was held from the defense, okay? And then whatever. They just gave him a new trial over all that. So now we know what's going on. This guy died, okay? Road rage incident, this guy died.
Incident was used in court to address his killer. So back in 2021, Chris Pelkey was shot and killed by Gabriel Horcasitas. And it happened in Chandler, Arizona, after an argument had taken place while they were driving. But according to reports, the men had stopped at a red light when Pelkey then got out of his vehicle and walked toward Horcasitas, who was in a car behind him, and he responded by firing multiple rounds. And then, when
they say multiple rounds, it's 3.
Into the trial, Pelkey's sister, Stacey Wales.
This is his sister, who said she was gathering victim impact statements. So basically, when you go to sentencing, you get statements and say, this is how it's affected my family, this is why, and you're reading those for the courtroom, for the judge, when he's trying to weigh how long to sentence somebody. And she says, well, my husband messes with AI some, and I was thinking, who's not speaking here? Oh, my dead brother. So I'm going to write what I think my brother would have said. I'm going to give it to my husband. He's going to take a picture of my dead brother and make an AI video from it to address the court. Watch this. I think this is too far.
Firing multiple rounds. And then, heading into the trial, Pelkey's sister, Stacey Wales, she began collecting impact statements and preparing her own when she had an idea.
We received 49 letters that the judge was able to read before walking into sentencing that day. But there was one missing piece.
And so she turned to her husband and a friend of his who had been working with AI for a while. And together they created an...
It's not even good, dude. It's not even good. He's got like a weird bulgy eye. I don't know what's going on here.
She turned to her husband and a friend of his who had been working with AI for a while. And together they created an AI rendering of Chris that delivered his impact statement in a video shown in court, with Stacey further explaining.
I said, I have to let him speak. And I wrote what he would have said.
I mean, that would be awesome if he could speak on the impact. Like, we have people that survive rape, they come and speak, or people who survive an attempted murder, they speak. This is weird. And the fact that the judge admitted that he gave him a harder sentence, a longer sentence because of this AI video is very strange.
I have to let him speak. And I wrote what he would have said.
To Gabriel Horcasitas, the man who shot me.
This is the actual video. This is the actual video.
Would have said.
To Gabriel Horcasitas, the man who shot me. It is a shame we encountered each other that day in those circumstances. In another life, we probably could have been friends. I believe in forgiveness and in God who forgives. I always have. And I still do.
And that AI rendering it seemed to be received very well by many in the courtroom, including Chris's other family members, who Stacey said she had surprised with the video to get their genuine reaction. And it wasn't just the family members. The judge overseeing the case also appeared to be moved by the AI. In fact, the Pelkey's family told reporters that the judge was so moved that he ended up giving Horcasitas a longer sentence. With
the judge was so moved that the state asked for a 9.5-year sentence, and the judge gave him an extra year from this video. Yeah, that's one thing. AI doesn't understand beards still, or most AIs. There's some really good ones, and you have to go in and tweak them in really good models. AIs don't understand beards. When I do the AI beard trend, the AI trend on social media, and it does something with my face or whatever, like using TikTok, it thinks the beard is just part of the shirt. Like, it doesn't move. Even though my mouth will move, and the beard doesn't move. It says 10.5 years for manslaughter after being so moved by the powerful video, family says. The judge even referred to the video in his closing sentencing statements, saying thank you for the AI video.
His family told reporters that the judge was so moved that he ended up giving Horcasitas a longer sentence, with the judge sentencing him to 10.5 years, even though prosecutors had recommended 9.5.
So what do you guys think about that? Imagine, obviously, let's say I murder somebody, or I'm convicted of murder somebody. Then they bring him back from the grave, and they're like, I think this guy should get the death penalty or 100 years of prison. What do you think about that? Someone else is claiming they're actually putting words in your mouth and claiming that it's what you would have wanted. It's what you would have said. There's no that guy might have said, fuck this guy. Shoot me, motherfucker. I should have shot you. Not, I believe in a forgiving God. A God, I forgive you. We could have been buddies. We could have had a beer together. It's one thing if you just want to do this. It's another thing if the judge actually said that to the family. Like, I gave him an extra year because that AI video is so good. This guy still has an appeal processing for them not. So basically, they had this cell phone evidence from the victim for a year, and they didn't give it to the defense until 5 weeks into the trial. I think it was 5 weeks into the trial when they suddenly mentioned something about the guy's cell phone, and they're like, what do you mean the cell phone? And they're like, oh, the cell phone. And they're like, we didn't get any information from the cell phone. You guys downloaded his entire cell phone and didn't give it to us? So there's an appeal brewing for this case, which is weird. Especially the fact that there's text messages in there about the guy complaining, the victim, about how he's been snapping so much, and he's gotten to a couple other altercations over road rage, and he was talking about beating the fuck out of the next person that says something to him while he's driving. Like, I don't know. It was fucking weird that they specifically didn't share that information. And the reason the prosecutor said they didn't share that information is, yes, they downloaded all the phone, but they didn't go through it. They just downloaded it and didn't do anything with it. They didn't know that stuff was in there. But the prosecution, the defense is like, you telling me you downloaded the phone and nobody went through it? Why'd you download it? Why'd you download it? And that still doesn't. We get all the evidence you get, right? We get every piece of evidence that you get. This still doesn't explain why we didn't get it. Even if you didn't want to go through it, we should have still got it.
Let's talk about douchebag of the day contender Alan Fillion, who was just sentenced this week to 4 years in
This is from back in February, but I didn't see it.
federal prison over his little swatting obsession.
I'm going to commit a mass shooting in the name of Satan. Allahu Akbar.
Whereas that is just one of the calls that he made, complete with fake gunfire sound. And as far as how often he did this, in a plea agreement, this now 18-year-old who lives in LA County admitted that between August of 2022 and January of 2024, he made over 375 calls to emergency services with the intention of getting a response from them, with his targets including high schools, universities, religious buildings, as well as government officials.
Are you in front of the school right now?
Yes, I'm walking in now.
Okay, can you stop, please? Shots heard, Andrea, shots heard. Hey, can you lock down your facility?
Dude, even if these are fake, you know it's got to be so fucking stressful for the goddamn 911 guy or whoever.
I have a report of shots.
Dispatcher.
Central Valley High School was probably the worst call I've ever received.
Once I get your IP address through Google Voice, which you have been using, and get your information because they are subpoenaed, you will be getting charges. So stop calling
I
my
am
school.
never going to be caught. I am invincible.
With Fillion admitting that the swatting, it started as a power trip, but then he quickly turned it into a side hustle. And actually, in an advertisement that he posted across social media, he offered things like prices, $40, gas leak, fire for EMS, fire, gas leak, $35 for returning customers. This motherfucker was essentially offering loyalty member discounts, with other emergencies going up from there, with a major police response to the house costing $50 or $40 for returning customers. Follow to stay in the loop.
That's wild, dude. That AI thing's still tripping. Honestly, I'm still mad about the fucking weed eater. I don't know that I could be impartial right now. I'm still so goddamn mad about the weed eater. Tim Pool is the only guy that's wrong, so fucking wrong, about the 100 men versus a full-grown gorilla. Do people think a full-grown male gorilla has superpowers? 100 unarmed men would take down an elephant. People really don't understand the power and weight of 100 men. A gorilla would absolutely destroy 100 guys. First of all, you can't get 100 guys on a gorilla at one time anyways, right? What's the best? Maybe 8? 6, 8, they're shoulder to shoulder and surround the gorilla? Yeah, get the fuck out of here. Tim needs to go skateboard or some shit. I wanted to see that. Hold on. Here it is. This is what somebody was just talking about in chat. Trump's Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, sent this letter to Harvard. As you can see, the grammar, punctuation, and spelling are horrific. Is this really who we want to decide? The federal government has a sacred responsibility. The federal government has a sacred responsibility to be wise and important steward of American taxpayer dollars. Harvard University, despite amassing a largely tax-free $53.2 billion endowment, larger than the GDP of 100 countries, receives billions of dollars of taxpayer funds each year. Receiving such taxpayer funds is a privilege, not a right. Yet, no punctuation. Instead of using those funds to advance the education of its students, Harvard is engaging in a systemic pattern of violating federal law. Where do many of these students come from? Who are they? How do they get into Harvard? or even into our country, oh, that's the telltale sign right there. That's the that double dash. This is AI. No one uses this symbol. Tell me one time you've ever thought, I could use a hyphen, or I could hold down Control Function 0151. This is an AI thing. It always is. It always is. Every time you see this, it's an AI thing. No one uses this in text. The only time I've ever seen it used is, you know how sometimes people will make YouTube videos or social media videos where they have like a weird title with a bunch of weird, like curly, weird fucking letters and numbers and shit in it, like just to make it stand out, or a username. A username might have all weird letters for like your username. That's so weird for people to use this. I've never seen people use this ever. It is an AI thing. AI uses it every time I ask it for a question. I don't know why. I guess it's in the programming, but every time I ask it for a question, it uses that. Or ask it a question, it uses that. Why the brackets? Agman has called for the resignation of Pritzker, concluding that the mismanagement here is Penny Pritzker. They put a T in brackets. So did he say he mismanagement and you added the T? Anyway, somebody went through and corrected all of it. This is our education secretary. So the first comment says, Trump hired doers, not grammar teachers. Results are greater than red pens. Must be true. Somebody on the internet said it. Must be true. That's all I can say. Where is copy link address? There it is. Ron Macbeth.
We need to talk about India and Pakistan. All I want to do is finish season 2, episode 2 of The Last of Us, and it seems like world events just keep popping up to prevent me from finishing that show. Feels like I'm never going to finish that episode. By the way, if you know what happens in season 2, episode 2, don't tell me, okay? Anyway, I want to talk about the recent escalation between India and Pakistan, specifically Operation Sindoor, which is India's name for the attacks. I also want to talk about Pakistan's retaliation claims and possibilities, circulating rumors of downed Indian jets, specifically the Rafale, and what happens next. So let's break down the actual facts. Now, before I get started, literally just yesterday, I actually released a book about some airstrikes of my own called The Last Republic, which imagines a world where Mormon prophet Brigham Young founded his own nation of Deseret instead of the state of Utah. It's kind of like Man in the High Castle, Drake series, Guns of the South. And what's crazy is that the strikes India just performed are actually very similar to what happened in Deseret in my novel. Anyway, it's available on Amazon now, and Captain Moroni Squadron t-shirts are available at Bunker Branding. Audiobook for Marines coming real soon. So on May 6th, India launched Operation Sindoor, which targeted...
Okay, the scary thing, I said this in chat the other day, or in Discord. The scary thing about this, so they believe that Pakistan helped in that terrorist attack that happened at that like outdoor retreat thing that's kind of claimed by China, India, and Pakistan, that area. I forget what the name of it is. Starts with a K. The scary thing about Pakistan is like the fucking goat in asymmetrical warfare, okay? At one point, Pakistan was helping us, the U.S., as well as Iraq and Afghanistan insurgents all at the same time. They're really good at asymmetrical warfare. In India, there is a ton of Muslims. In India, they are treated like second-class citizens, lower than, right? They treated like shit in India. In a lot of places. If Pakistan wanted to, within 24 hours, they could probably have 1,000 suicide bombers, right? They could provide support and supplies and a direction, and boom. India is just going to be blowing up all over the fucking place. Blowing up all over the fucking place. Without even engaging their actual army. That would be devastating, right? If there's 3 terrorist attacks a day for the next fucking 6 months, the people in India are going to be fucking pissed and terrified, no matter whether there's a war going on or not. Plus, they're both nuclear powers, right? They both have nuclear weapons, which is scary in itself. You got to be careful fucking with Pakistan as India here.
Either 5 or 9, depending on the sources you have, sites in Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This was in response to
Kashmir.
the second attack in Kashmir, where 26 Indian tourists were.
Did you guys see the guy? I can't show the video, but did you guys see the person that was on the zip line that didn't even know he was recording the terrorist attack? He's like riding a fucking zip line, videoing himself, and underneath him, you just hear a couple pops, and then people start running like crazy. He was on a zip line in this place while these insurgents came in, rounded people up, asked them if they were Muslim. And if they were Muslim, they started asking them to recite certain prayers. If they couldn't recite the prayers, they killed all the men.
Were killed. Now, a sindoor, by the way, is a mark that is applied to the hairline of some married Hindu women. India asserts that the strikes were just targeted at terrorist infrastructure linked to certain terrorist groups like Lashkar al-Taiba, Jaish al-Mohammed. Last week, I made a video where I said I didn't think that India would have a huge response.
And the reason's actually pretty simple. I actually don't think that there's going to be a huge response from India.
And it's kind of looking like I was right about that. This wasn't a huge response. These were guided strikes against a handful of specific areas. It seems like
this could be good for them. Right, if they can play it off like, hey, we just attacked the terrorist places we think are responsible in your country. We didn't kill any non-terrorist people. This could be good. And it kind of gives them, they can save face and say, hey, we retaliated without going to full-blown war with Pakistan.
Pakistani military was kind of left out of this. Now, India does emphasize that the strikes were very precise and with the intention of avoiding Pakistani military facilities. It's starting to look like that might be true. And what this does is it gives Pakistan a little bit of breathing room to de-escalate. However,
there you go.
They did report civilian casualties, including children, and they condemned the attacks as an act of war. Pakistan.
Sure, which they kind of have to, right, to save their face. Most countries don't want to go to a long, drawn-out war like this, right? The problem is, Destiny was talking about this on his lawsuit. Okay, you can't back another country into such a corner that they have no upside to like not going to war. So when you're in a lawsuit, okay, let's say you're in a lawsuit, someone sues you. And when they sue you, they make several claims about you without going into detail, without claiming more than what you did, without putting everything out there. There's a chance that you could settle out of court, okay? But when someone sues you, they put every fucking detail into it. They make claims that you didn't even fucking do. They go above and beyond making these claims, making you sound like the most horrible person in the world. The damage to you is already done in that first filing. And there's no world where you're going to reach a settlement outside of court. Because why? The shit's already been fucking done, right? Same thing with a country. Countries want a little breathing room to say, okay, we smacked them on the hand, but, you know, we're out of it now and everything's good. They did this. We retaliated. We think they did that. We retaliated, whatever, without having to go to war. But the problem is when you back a country that's not a fucking like a warmongering country or like Russia or some shit, right? When you back a country into such a corner where their only response is over the top, open fucking warfare, you've kind of fucked yourself.
Claim to have shot.
War is not good for a country most of the time. You know, especially when you're like a bordering war where they can reach out and touch you. I know America oftentimes has like this economic boom during wars, and that's because we're kind of isolated over here. If we were talking about going to war in Mexico, it probably wouldn't be, you know, if Mexico was another superpower equal to us, it probably wouldn't be such a good time.
gives Pakistan a little bit of breathing room to de-escalate. However, Pakistan did report civilian casualties, including children, and they condemned the attacks as an act of war. Pakistan claimed to have shot down 5 Indian fighter jets, including 3 Rafales, Sukhoi 30, and MiG-29. They also reported civilian casualties from artillery exchanges along the line of control, which is the name of the border region between India and Pakistan in Kashmir. Now, India has not confirmed any aircraft losses, although this really isn't something you can hide for very long. India does have a free press, and it is a democracy, although it is kind of slowly slipping into authoritarianism under Prime Minister Modi. But, you know, in a democracy, you can't keep a shoot down from the press. There's going to be investigations, soldiers are going to post pictures of battle damage, stuff's going to end up online and get leaked to the press. So if any Indian jets were shot down, we're going to know. Might not be tomorrow, but eventually we're going to find out that India lost some jets. There is another thing here. Is it even possible for Pakistan to shoot down up to 5 Indian jets? It's certainly possible, and this has nothing to do with the skill of Pakistani air defenders or a possible lack of skill of Indian Air Force pilots. It really comes down to India's lack of dedicated SEAD or suppression of enemy air defenses platforms. Sometimes you hear this called wild weasel, and that's where you kind of bait surface-to-air missiles into firing at you, flight of the intruder style.
Sam just took it off, 1 o'clock. No, she just took another one. It's not even fun until they send up 3 at once. That's 4. You happy now?
And then you fire an anti-radar missile down the guidance beam back toward the surface-to-air missile launcher that fired at you.
Again. Shoot!
Really, only the U.S. and China have dedicated SEAD capability. The U.S. has with the F-16 CJ, and China has it with the J-16D. Not even Russia has dedicated SEAD, although technically the MiG-31, the C-35 can kind of sort of do the job, but they're not dedicated SEAD platforms. Now, India doesn't have any dedicated SEAD platforms either, so normally before executing this kind of strike, you have the SEAD aircraft go in first, and they find all the surface-to-air missile launchers and they hit them. Now, Rafale and the Su-30 are kind of capable of doing this, but again, it's not a dedicated SEAD aircraft, and SEAD is one of those jobs that you better be good at, right? Because you're essentially teasing people into shooting at you, and you don't get to make a mistake with that. Well, you get to make one mistake with that, right? So India really doesn't have any dedicated SEAD aircraft, so I think it's possible that their strikes may have been exposed to more Pakistani surface-to-air missile fire than perhaps India was expecting. So like I said, it is possible that Pakistan could have shot down up to 5 Indian planes, but I can't give you a percentage confidence on that. It's just something you're going to have to wait for, and I would say it's most likely a result of India not really having that suppression of enemy air defenses capability ingrained in their military the same way the United States and China does. So speaking of these shootdowns, amid all the chaos, there were these rumors that kind of circulated online, and God knows how this is going to freaking end up. But posts claim that Pakistan shot down Indian Rafale jets. They had images circulating showing wreckage purportedly from these jets. However, there are some fact checkers who debunked these claims, and the images were from like older incidents that are unrelated to the current conflict. And this kind of highlights the importance of verifying information before sharing, especially during conflicts where misinformation can escalate.
And the information is coming so fucking quick as well.
Now, the international community is kind of watching this really closely. With both India and Pakistan being nuclear-armed nations, the stakes are pretty high on this. Europe in particular has expressed utmost concern, emphasizing the need for diplomacy and restraint. Now, I didn't think that India would commit to large-scale airstrikes, mainly because Pakistan has such an advantage in asymmetric warfare. It's freaking nuts. That was actually one of the reasons why I didn't think India would commit to a large-scale attack. It might look good in the newspapers, but what Pakistan could do next would be pretty bad. Pakistan's ISI, their intelligence service, is really, really good at what they do. And they were able to play both sides during America's war in Afghanistan. They had ISI people helping the Taliban, they had ISI people helping America, right? Pakistan is great at this gray zone stuff, right? So, you know, when that attack in Kashmir started, a bunch of people started doing videos about India and Pakistan's militaries, and I had a bunch of people reach out to me. They're like, "Oh, can you do a video about the order of battle between Pakistan and India?" And I was like, "No, because India does have a larger military than Pakistan, but Pakistan doesn't have to fight that way. Pakistan can use asymmetric forces to fight India. India has 211 million Muslims. I guarantee you that Pakistan can find, let's say, 1,000 radicals who want to become martyrs. And now you
there you go.
7th times 100.
Exactly.
America said,
from what intelligence has gathered, it would be 9/11 times 100.
9/11 times 100? Jesus, that's...
Yes, 91,100.
Which is kind of funny. India might have the ability to perform precision strikes against Pakistan, even if it is at a cost, maybe. But Pakistan has the ability to terrorize 1.4 billion Indians with only 1,000 martyrs. And you can't bomb your way out of that. You just can't. So yeah, as much as I hate to say it, I don't know what's going to happen next, but Pakistan could make India's life really crappy right now, especially if Pakistan struck back with asymmetric forces. It's also going to be interesting to kind of track the disinformation coming out of India and Pakistan regarding the strikes and the upcoming conflict, if there is any. Russia and India are allies. India also has an extensive network of click farm and bot companies. Pakistan is mostly aligned with China, and China has an extensive network of click farm and bot companies. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Be very, very careful arguing with anyone online about this topic, because you're probably speaking to a bot. right? It would actually be kind of funny if just Pakistan and India just argue each other through bots, right? Whoever wins, social media loses. Right. Hey, again,
always.
Last Republic, available out now on paperback and Kindle. Amazon.
Check out Ryan McBeth's new book.
Is coming soon if you're a Marine. Get your Captain Moroni squadron gear, bunker branding. I even have Captain Moroni patches. I would love for someone at Hill Air Force Base to put this on and pose next to an F-16. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching.
All right.
Hey, everybody, it's Tim Miller.
See what,
here. I am back.
Congressman
Jim Hines, ranking member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. There's a lack of intelligence on what's happening out there today. So it's important that we bring you in on this. And I want to talk in particular, Congressman, about this assessment that the Intelligence Department had made that was undergirding, I guess, you can maybe explain if I have this exactly right, the argument that they need to employ the Alien Enemies Act, right, which was this notion that, that we had this invading force, that Venezuela and the Venezuelan Maduro government and Nicaragua were somehow working in concert. And in order to combat that invading force, we have to, enact this wartime power in order to deport these folks to El Salvador. And as it turns out, you guys over on the committee were asking for the classified, internal documents and briefing on this. And it showed that, actually, that's not exactly the case. So that's my Reader's Digest summary. You get
of course it's not.
Just not
Imagine.
exactly the case, right? What the president, the administration, and the director of national intelligence were saying, which is that Tren de Aragua is operating as a proxy of the Venezuelan government, is the exact opposite of what the intelligence community, which purportedly the director of national intelligence runs, was actually saying, right? And it's deadly serious stuff, Tim, right? Because hey, we're a country that takes liberty and freedom seriously, and at the core of that is that the government doesn't get to take your stuff or take you or whatever without due process, and that's true of everybody in our country. And there are these very, very narrow exceptions, including the bizarre Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which says that in this very limited circumstance, if there's a state of war, or if there, in wonderful sort of 18th century language, if there is a predatory incursion, then due process disappears. Well, the White House has a few lawyers, and they know that we're not in a state of war, and so they were like, okay, maybe we can convince some folks that there is a predatory incursion. Maybe Alito and Clarence Thomas will sign up for that idea, and maybe we can get a few more. Well, that, of course, relies on the notion that that Tren de Aragua is something other than just a regular, terrible street gang, right? Well, it turns out that the intelligence community that the Americans spend $90 billion-ish a year to pay for looked at this and said, no, there is no direction of Tren de Aragua by Venezuelans. And I mean, that's scary for two reasons.
So this would be Venezuela directing them as a nation to infiltrate and destroy the United States or some shit, right?
Number one, due process is pretty important, and it's important for people you don't like as well as for people that you do like. And secondly, the president and a lot of senior officials were, if I may put this very nicely, not being entirely honest with us about this.
Yeah, that is very nicely, not entirely honest. I mean, they made it up out of whole cloth, it seems like to me.
I'll sign up for that.
Okay, I do wonder, there are a few things that are concerning about this. There's one, I don't know if I want to call it a silver lining, but the thing that I was curious about, which is, these guys, why did they play ball with you, do you think? I mean, I'm kind of surprised that the administration isn't just totally stonewalling everything just based on, how they're following the norms and procedures and rules of law across other elements of the administration.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fascinating question. We're all scratching our heads around here because you're, of course, referring to the fact that I guess it was the Freedom of the Press Foundation submitted a Freedom of Information Act request, and lo and behold, it was acted on very quickly. Yeah. The report that is now public is dated April 7th. Sometimes FOIA requests can take months and months, if not years, right? Boom, it's out there. There's probably a story there. I don't know what it is, but what I do fear, since this was just such a black eye for the administration's credibility on such an important topic, what I do fear is that, some pretty hefty political people are now knocking on the door of whatever poor SOB does FOIA requests for the government saying it's time for you to take a very long vacation to a radar station in Alaska.
That's also concerning. Okay, thank you. I love that. That's very appropriate for the Bulwark that you take like a little hopeful anecdote and turn it into something scary and concerning and alarming. So I guess my other hopeful potential anecdote is these guys are have almost no leg to stand on legally. I think as far as looking forward, I want to get to the people that are already in El Salvador next. But as far as looking forward, making this argument, what do you make of that? I mean, this seems to really undermine any plausible case they would have that this is an appropriate use of the Alien Enemies Act.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, the case was always going to be thin, right? And
of course, it's not appropriate.
1798 language about a predatory incursion, and so it was always going to be a thin read, right? I mean, what's next? Is the mafia going to be subject to this because they look like Tren de Aragua and maybe they have some connection to Sicily? I mean, you can see the slippery slope here, right? So yeah, and I'll tell you, this makes me a little nervous too because they don't have any legal ground to stand on, and it's in some ways it's ridiculous, right? Because if they'd afforded these people due process, these people would be on their way out of the country by and large, right? But they chose not to. They chose a shortcut. Now they're embarrassed about the fact that they were lying to the American people about the connections between Venezuela and Tren de Aragua. And of course, this is the Trump administration, right? So backing down is never okay. Tulsi Gabbard is still out there saying this is a case of, a media outlet manipulating a report. You can read the darn report and it contradicts what she says, right? And so, it makes me nervous because at some point the courts are going to rule, you guys had no basis to do this, so you need to get these people back. And, Stephen Miller is going to be whispering in the president's ear, just don't do it. Just don't do it. And now you've got the prospect of a president ignoring the Supreme Court. And that is a very, very ugly place for this country to be.
Yeah, that's alarming. What are the folks that, have now that are in Socotra in El Salvador because of these actions? Those are 3 planes or whatever that have been there now, and at least several cases where it seems like these folks are not even Tren de Aragua, even if they were doing a predatory incursion, like the makeup artist, the guy with the autism awareness tattoo, the Uber driver in Michigan that accidentally drove across to Canada, and there's the family that went to Colombia first when it came the right way. Like there are 4 or 5 of these at minimum, and so what do you have any thoughts on what is possible at this point regarding those folks?
Sure, I know what's possible. It would take 3 milliseconds for the president of the United States to call up Mr. Bukele, the president of El Salvador, and say every single person that got off that plane and is in your prison gets on a plane this afternoon and comes back. That's absolutely possible. El Salvador is not going to say no, right? But it's an ego question for this president who doesn't like to be told what to do and certainly doesn't like to backtrack from a previous position. So now we're in the uncomfortable position that I alluded to before. The courts are eventually going to order that happen. And the MAGA folks are going to say, yeah, but these are illegal, undocumented, illegal aliens. A lot of them are gang members. Fine, that may be true. In which case, we want them the hell out of the country or in a United States prison, right? I mean, they never need to prove it. El Salvador, they could have been sent to their home countries. They could have been imprisoned here in the United States. But the point is that's irrelevant who they are. Bad people are entitled to due process in this country too. And the whole reason for that is that everybody is entitled to it. We don't know if somebody's bad until they've been through due process.
Yeah, and it feels like now we're moving out of the intelligence space into kind of the PR and like the politics of all this, but it already feels like the attention is starting to wane, right? And like there's so much crazy stuff happening in the world. Trump's doing so much crazy stuff. Like, what do you feel as an elected official that it's going to be incumbent upon you guys, the Democrats, to use the power you have in the minority to continue to advocate on this, or is this like these guys are boned till 2029? What do you think?
Yeah, look, I mean, rule of law is not something that should be judged against whether the American people are focused or not on it. The fact is that it's important all the time. And yeah, we're going to keep raising hell. But gosh, I'd love to imagine that maybe some of my Republican colleagues might also say, hey, rule of law is important. Do we really want a precedent set where a president can just decide to arbitrarily restrict due process? I mean, I chuckle with my Republican opponents. When President Bernie Sanders is in office, are you guys going to love the fact that you created an imperial powers for the guy? Yeah. So I'd believe that maybe they would help, but I'm not holding my breath on it.
Do you ever get any serious replies to that question? Because it is a real question. I mean, I've got a couple of people I'd like to send to El Salvador. If Jim Himes is ever president again, I might have a few folks I'd like to recommend.
You can run yourself and just let it happen. Look, there's a list of 300 questions that none of my Republican colleagues want to answer. Right? That's one of them. Tariffs is another one. Medicaid is another one. Because right now they know that to get up in the president's face is to probably bring around the end of their political career. And that, I'm a big believer that there's some things that you ought to be willing to sacrifice your political career about, including maybe the rule of law. But unfortunately, way too many of my Republican colleagues don't feel the same way.
All right, last thing on a separate topic. We had some news yesterday that we had yet another Super Hornet fighter jet on the Harry S. Truman aircraft lost into the Red Sea. It's still called the Red Sea so far. We're renaming a lot of seas. We're not doing well for bringing prices down, but we're renaming a lot of bodies of water. So I don't know, with the Red Sea, we might update that to something else. I don't know, the MAGA Red Sea, the Red Hat Sea, maybe. We've lost
the Red Hat Sea.
Lost in the sea there. Do you have any intel on what the hell's happening? Is the Secretary of Defense on this at all?
I don't have a good answer for you on that. I'll sort of reserve judgment. I want to give our troops in the field a lot of latitude on how they operate, especially when they're engaged in hostilities as they are. But yeah, this does raise some questions, right? And again, I don't want to speculate too much, but I think of the United States Navy as being incredibly, incredibly competent, and to lose two very, very expensive fighters in a fairly short period of time does raise some questions.
Yeah, 2 jets, putting an Atlantic journalist on a text chat. We're firing random people. Not a lot of W's on the board for Secretary Hegseth so far. Several staffers writing op-eds about how he's terrible. Not a great resume so far.
I just, amongst many other things, I wish he seems to delight mainly in trolling on social media, and in a healthy society, the Secretary of Defense doesn't have a spare millisecond to troll people on social media. And by the way, no desire to do so either, because they're conscious of the fact that they have to be serious people to do the jobs that they have.
Congressman Jim Himes, thanks for keeping us posted on everything going.
You would think. That doesn't mean for sure, but you would think.
On Intel World, I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right, subscribe to the feed, everybody. We'll be back soon.
It doesn't seem like the backlash they get, or the people talking about how crazy it is, or the judge's orders, or the other politicians, or the protest. It doesn't have any effect on them, right? They just push on through it. They just push on through. They don't give a fuck. They're in the route no matter what. All right, guys, it's 1 a.m. here. I'm out. I'll try to be back here earlier tomorrow. Today was the fucking weed eater destroyed me. I don't know what else to say. So consider supporting the show. We could greatly use your support right now to pay the bills around here. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Thank you for being here. Go to coldbeer.fund if you want to support the show financially, or follow, or like, share. We appreciate it. And I'll see everybody on the next one. Have a good night. Love you. See you. Bye. I'm the rural king. Fuck that place.
But I can tell you this about if this douchebag happens to see this particular show, you don't have the forking balls to call out the people on this planet by name and tell them exactly who they are and tell them the rest of the world who they are. You don't have the forking balls. You don't have the balls.
I saw that the airline that Trump used for the deportations got hacked, and that's how we got the passenger logs and shit. That's insane. We had to hack a website to get the information that the Trump administration was supposed to submit to the court. Like, what the fuck?
cause you ain't seen none yet. And they say that I'm a lunatic. Well, listen, bitch, I came equipped with a quick wit and a 6th sense for the stupid shit. Where my true believer? Y'all need Jesus. Praise the Lord, head to the extreme. All these false fucking prophets who profit off of gossip. Worshipping drums, cocking, begging for a throat deposit. Swinging fucking meat hammers like fool in a thong. He's strapped to the shaft, eating his chest like he's King Kong. Starving for attention, I'ma make your gut burst. I'll be your huckleberry, I can quench that thirst. Baby eating lizard people, alien sex. What's next? Trump in a dress, fucking Flynn on his desk. A retard in a vest, climbing up.